nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there. And worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First-rate podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
Hello and welcome to a Saturday edition of the Managing Madrid Podcast, where unfortunately Madridistas all around the world are having a miserable Saturday because Real Madrid just put an absolute brutal performance against a very, very, very good Villarreal side at La Ceramica. And the good news is that it was an early kickoff, which means we get to finish work early. The bad news is that Real Madrid lost. Good news again, Euan McTear is back on the podcast. Euan, welcome to 2023 on the Managing Madrid Podcast Network. How you doing?
Yeah, good. You say welcome to 2023 like I arrived late or whatever. Like I've been spending these past 7 days just... happy to be back on and early kickoff. Sure, not the result Real Madrid wanted, but actually quite an interesting game that we've got to discuss. So it was an interesting one. It was a good one.
If you're a La Liga fan
if you're neutral, this was a good game, yeah.
Neutral or Villarreal fan, I think you enjoyed the game. If you're a Real Madrid fan, you probably did not enjoy it very much. Or I suppose, Barca neutral, enemy of Madrid, anything that is not Real Madrid, you enjoyed the game. Do you want to start from the top, from the very beginning? Broke out. I kind of stayed away from news this morning because I was out sledding with my kids. It's snowing here. And I kind of came home and I just checked some quick things, checked the starting lineup. Also, I checked that Real Madrid drew Villarreal in the Copa del Rey round of 16. So this is far from the finished Real Madrid-Villarreal matchup this season. But we can start with the starting lineup. We knew that Carvajal wasn't going to be in the game. We thought Vázquez was going to take his place. MIlitao did, or Rudiger, however you want to frame it. Basically, MIlitao, Rudiger, Alba, Mendy, backline. First time in Real Madrid's history, a Spaniard did not feature. It's one of those stats that, you just kind of don't believe it.
Yeah, 4,436 games Real Madrid have played, including today. And first time the starting lineup had no Spaniards in it. I guess going back, it's, Real Madrid have always been half the squad is Spanish and half the squad isn't, at least in the last few decades. So there's always somebody there. You think of some of the players who were just undroppable, Ramos, Casillas. It's normal that this never happened. But this was probably going to happen at some point because the current squad, the only Spaniard that is sure starter is Carvajal, and his backup is Lucas Vázquez. Apart from that, every other Spanish player, you've got Ceballos, Asensio. There's 7 in total in the squad. They're not regular starters. So this was going to happen at some point. And it happened today. The reason was that Lucas Vázquez played the whole game in midweek in the Copa del Rey. Ancelotti said he was a bit tired, so they went with MIlitao. He even mentioned in the press conference that part of the reason was he was impressed with MIlitao at right back with Brazil in the World Cup. So fair enough, kind of makes sense. But from the very first minute, Rudiger kind of started more towards the right than MIlitao. I don't know if that was by design because Rudiger's first 5 minutes were just incredibly bad. I don't know what was going on there, but in the first 5 minutes, Rudiger had 5 uncharacteristic mistakes. He improved as the game went on a little bit, but not drastically, but just really strange mistakes in the first few minutes. And I think that set the tone. Villarreal, I think, smelled blood, went for it, played a really good first half. Actually, I think Villarreal's first half was better than their second half. And they went from it for the very beginning. And you could tell from minute 1, this was going to be a difficult one for Real Madrid if you didn't already know that before kickoff.
Yeah, just going back to the statistic about Spanish players not starting or starting, I'm not surprised that we didn't have a Spaniard starting today. I'm more surprised that it's never happened before. Just somewhere. I understand we always had a Casillas or a Ramos or a Raúl or whoever, Xabi Alonso at one point. There are Carvajal. There's been so many undisputed Spanish starters in our team, but I'm surprised there wasn't like a random game where it's like suspension or injury. That's never happened before. It blew my mind. And I'm not even sure I knew that. I'm literally writing a book about Real Madrid's history. And I don't, if I knew that stat, I forgot about it maybe, but that's never happened before is incredible to me.
Like, how significant do you think it is? Like, I think this is like quite a significant, like this was already happening. Real Madrid, in terms of their recruitment, has become so much more global. It's becoming such a global club. It's happening everywhere as well. You know, so many of these, top clubs, Premier League clubs, Bayern Munich, they're becoming less and less based on the country that they're based in. This was always going to happen. It'll happen in other big clubs as well, these kind of things for the first time. But how significant do you think it is? Because I think this is like quite a big deal that the biggest sporting institution in Spain, basically, and one of the biggest institutions in Spain in general, doesn't have a Spanish player on the field for the starting lineup, has an Italian coach. The fan base has grown so much. Most of the listeners we have here, we have a few Spaniards, of course, but most of us are not in Spain. But for the Spanish Real Madrid fan, which is millions of them, I think today is quite an interesting turning point, maybe.
I suppose it's subjective, and it really depends on how much you care and how much you don't care about players being Spanish and more just care about having good players from anywhere in the world. It's fun. Like, there used to be rules in place that wouldn't guarantee it, but it would pretty much would guarantee that this would be impossible. Like in the Yaya era, for example, part of the reason why there were so many Real Madrid youth products was because there was a rule at that time that said you basically couldn't have any foreigners, So by the natural evolution of that is you basically have to promote your entire youth squad and have a bunch of Spanish players because the rule forces your hand to do so. These rules don't really exist now. I mean, there's quotas in the squad that you have to have X amount of Spanish players in the squad. That's for sure. But it doesn't say anything about your starters have to be Spanish or anything like that. And I suppose it's just how much you care about it might depend on where you're from, Euan. I would assume Lucas would care about it more than me, for example.
Yeah.
Or Eduardo. I suppose it depends on what your viewpoint is.
Yeah.
What do you think about it?
Interesting start to the game. I mean, I think I don't really pay too much attention to it, but I do think here in Spain there was quite a reaction to it, quite a sort of shock to it. Not shock at the fact it's happened, because it was coming. Most games there's only one Spaniard. But I think here it is going to be a talking point over the next week. You see how angry Spanish Real Madrid fans get when Luis Enrique didn't call up any Spanish players. Now they haven't even called up any Spanish players, and I think that just shows you how much they love to have Spanish players in the Spain squad, in the Real Madrid team. There's always been a sort of extra bit of love given to the Spanish players. Remember the campaign for Isco to start when, he was, could have started, could have not, but there was a special love for Isco because he was Spanish. And I think just now there's, if there's not another Spanish player comes through, a regular starter in the near future, I think the fans that go week in, week out to the Bernabeu, the Spanish fans, I think they do care about that. So it's a talking point that's from before today and for after today, but today I guess is the day when this stat finally ended, which was quite interesting, and yeah, for sure the most interesting talking point of the starting lineup. But as we also said, that led to the MIlitao, Rudiger, Alaba, Mondi backline, which never mind what country they were from, this was just an interesting backline in the football terms as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, really incredible when you get a player who's not only Spanish, but like goes through the entire Castilla system and then retires as a Real Madrid player. Like there are rare players like this, like not necessarily even retire, but just like Manolo Sanchez, for example, who grew up in the youth team and then played for the club for 20 years. Then you get players like even who are not as good as the Sanchez level, but the Gutis, who were part of the youth system. And I think there's a really special connection with the club, with players like that. At the same time, the greatest players in Real Madrid history actually are not, Spanish. Probably the top 3 to 5. Most of the top 10 are not, although there are going to be some of them in there. But I guess it's not a prerequisite to be Spanish to become a Real Madrid legend. So I just personally didn't care about it that much. I care more about how good you are and how much you love the club. And I don't think being Spanish is necessarily a prerequisite for that. So, but again, I obviously do not fault someone for feeling that they want more Spanish players. That's a subjective thing, I think. Well, we were talking about the back line and Rudiger and MIlitao. Yeah, the start was weird because about 5 minutes or so, MIlitao just takes the right back slot permanently. And I saw people mention like, no, Rudiger was starting at right back, center back the whole time. Like, if you pay attention, the starting kickoff, no, that's not what was happening. The announcers announced it as Rudiger starting at right back, and then he's literally standing at the right back position on the field, makes a couple of mistakes, and then after a few minutes, they switch it. And I don't know what was going on there, but whatever your interpretation of it was, MIlitao obviously played right back for most of this game. And there was just confusion in that half space between Rudiger and MIlitao all game. Moreno and Yeremy Pino were carving that space up. Great passing, great movement. They nearly scored they got into so many great goal scoring positions in the box in the first half. And it's really hard to pinpoint like what is like the main concern for Real Madrid in this game, because to me it was a bit of everything. It was that the backline looked confused. We were poor under pressure. We were poor tracking runners. Our press was really bad. So I think part of the reason why the defense even looked shambolic was that Villarreal were just laughing at our press and just passing around us and exploiting the space. There wasn't much space with Vinicius and Benzema to work with. Juan Foyth was unbelievable. Again, he's done this against Vinicius before. And I think Vinicius got to his spots at some points in this game, but it's hard for anyone to defend Vinicius better than what Foyth did today. That's kind of like on the table of like the Kyle Walker, Araujo, Reece James mold of players Vinicius has struggled against. So that was tough. And to add all that, I tried to emphasize this point as much as I could. I thought Villarreal were brilliant, like really, really good. Like they thoroughly deserved to win this. So it's just hard to know like what the main problem was. But there was a lot of problems today for Real Madrid.
Yeah, there's some Real Madrid losses where Real Madrid lost the game, and then there's some where the other team won the game, and then there's some with a mix of both. This is a mix of both, but I would maybe lean even more towards Villarreal won the game. They were just so good. They had their full starting lineup basically, which they haven't had all season. Juan Foyth being one of the examples. He missed basically the entire pre-World Cup part of the season. He's back. He's in good form. He's walking like a World Cup winner. He looks really confident. Knew what he was doing against Vinicius from minute one. So Villarreal starting to click a little bit under Quique Setién after a slow start. So they are going to be a tough team for anybody to play, especially at home. They've got that stadium back. They were playing. If anyone doesn't know, they were redoing their stadium up. So before the World Cup, they were playing at Levante Stadium down the road in Valencia. They've now had 2 games back there. They beat Valencia 2-1 at a local derby. They beat Real Madrid now 2-1. The stadium looks nice. Really good atmosphere. They've got the tube man back. You know, the kind of wavy like tube man you get outside like a car dealership. Like they've got one of them behind the goals, which was going crazy after the first goal. Villarreal is going to be a difficult place to go for anybody just now. So keep that in mind. This isn't like Real Madrid losing away to some, relegation fodder. This is a tough game. But still, there was a lot that went badly for Real Madrid. And you kind of touched on it a little bit, the confusion in the back line. And I think it was confusion all over the pitch because I went through this and looked at how many players played in multiple positions in this game. We spoke about MIlitao and Rudiger changing. MIlitao then went to centre-back when Lucas Vázquez came on. So you've got those two. You also had Alaba at centre-back, then at left-back when Mondi went off for Rodrigo. You had Fede Valverde started at right forward, was then moved to right midfield, then got taken off. And you had Toni Kroos starting at right midfield, and then he gets moved to the pivot when Tchouaméni goes off. So that's 5 players who, throughout the game, played in different positions. And all those players are versatile players. They all can do multiple positions. But to ask players to move around in a game is asking a lot of them and the teammates who are alongside them, not quite sure where they're going to find each other. And I think you need to be careful about moving too many players at the same time. 5 players to switch position from minute 1 to minute 90 in a game is a lot. You could even add Courtois as a 6th player if you really want to be tongue-in-cheek because he was thrown up for the corner at the end. But 5 serious players who played multiple positions in this game, and I think that's the root of the confusion you mentioned.
I think fluidity can help in certain situations offensively, but it's really dangerous defensively. No one knows where anyone is. And that's what happens sometimes when everyone is just kind of doing different things. It's good and unpredictable in some senses, in certain circumstances, if you're good at it and you know how to position yourself defensively after you lose the ball. But it's not like it's crazy because, you know, I remember when Ancelotti first arrived at Real Madrid. Remember the first string of games, there was that really, really aggressive.
The first time or
this time he's come back. Like,
right, yeah.
Like last year. What is it, last year?
Yeah.
This is the second season?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when he first arrived last season, remember he did that really aggressive press the first like couple months or so, and then he stopped. And it's just the press never improved since then. It just hasn't improved. The press was so bad today. There was just at least one player just didn't know where he was supposed to be defensively. And there was just so much space in behind. And that coupled with some of the fluidity of players being interchangeable, it makes it worse, especially in this situation, especially on a team that's in good form. As you said, Kiyan at Villarreal, they've improved with each passing game, and they look great today. I mean, everyone looked really good. I mean, I think kind of a natural place to go from here is that I know that Vinicius versus Foyth is a matchup that we highlighted before this game. Jose and I were talking about it. Almost every preview we do is Vinicius versus ex-fullback. This one we highlighted too because Foyth is a really good defender. And I thought Villarreal also just defended really well in conjunction to Foyth being good individually one-on-one. This theme of a lot being on Vinicius' shoulder, I think, remains today because he's expected to do so much. Benzema's still not in form. Although he did have a couple really, really nice one-touch passes today in the box. Fede's been quiet since in the 2 games after the World Cup. So you're not getting much offensive contributions from the right side to help stretch it out a bit and create some space. And so Vinicius has been just a lot on his shoulders. There were some sequences in this game, Euan, he gets past one man and there's like 3-4 players converging on him and he has no one to pass it to. And Foyth was just really good on top of that. And it's just a lot. It's just a lot on his shoulders. And I think you need more production. And I don't know how you solve it, but you need more from Fede, I think. You needed more from Fede in this game and the last game.
So one of the ways that it seemed like they were trying to solve it at the end was when Rodrigo came on, he spent a lot of the time on the left, not on the right. When he was substituted on and Fede moved back from right forward to right midfield, the assumption was that Rodrigo just slots into right forward. But he was there a little bit, but really he was mostly down standing with Vinicius, the two of them on the left side. One of them would have the ball, the other one would be alongside. And it was like a sort of double punch that they were trying to do down the left, leaving the right side completely vacant. So you're kind of, we've outlined the 2 solutions. One is to make the right side better and not put as much on Vinicius, or the other is to just give up on the right side completely and try to add another winger on the left like they did with Rodrigo. And that was when Foyth struggled the most, I think, those last 10-15 minutes. That was when Villarreal really resorted to fouling Vinicius, which for the first hour, you know, there was a few, of course, they're strong. Everyone's going to be physical with Vinicius. That's the easiest way to stop him. But they weren't fouling him so much. But the last 10-15 minutes, he won, maybe 3, 4, 5 dangerous fouls around about the area. That was partly because Rodrigo was alongside him and Foyth wasn't always the one on Vinicius. That was an interesting way that they tried to solve it. I'm sure this has happened before, but I don't really remember seeing it quite so blatantly that you have Vinicius and Rodrigo standing like pretty much in the same position on the pitch. I don't know if this is a solution going forward, but that was one that kind of stuck out as interesting to me as a way they tried to solve it, and it didn't work ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, I think he benefits from that because Mendy doesn't do much offensively, so he never had really a fullback to kind of link up with in the final third. The Rodrigo overloading the left side with Vinicius has happened quite a few times this season. I think it's more prominent this season than it was last season. Last season, it was much more symmetrical. But this season, I think it's been a little bit more prominent. And it has been a quote unquote offered solution, at least. And in some cases, an actual solution where it really works. Today, Villarreal were too good. There was just no space to work with. I mean, even like the frantic when Real Madrid were trying to equalize towards the end and they had more ball in Villarreal's half, I never really felt like we were going to penetrate. There was just, Camavinga and Kroos and these guys, they would try to link up with Vinicius and Benzema. Some really nice one-touch passing, even in some sequences, but just you can't do that the entire way up the field and into the box the way Villarreal were defending. They took away the space brilliantly, I thought. The funny thing is, Euan, is that despite, in my opinion, I think, and is the wide consensus that Villarreal were the better team, Real Madrid still did create enough to score a couple goals. Benzema had that great chance in the first half. Let me just actually pull up the chart here, what they were. Rodrigo, 77th minute, the left-footed shot. That's the one where it looks like he's scoring, but he kind of just cuts it across the face of goal instead of putting it in the net.
Which I think was a difficult one. Reina makes himself so big there that, you always hear the commentators say, oh, he has to get that on target. I mean, you can put it on target and go right at the goalkeeper. Sometimes to avoid the goalkeeper, you're trying to find the corner, and I think he tried to get it over Reina, who made himself big. But yeah, that was one of the better chances for sure. But there was a few like you're outlining.
There was the MIlitao one where he finds himself like point blank in front of Pepe Reina, and I guess the last person you want in that goal scoring position is probably him, a makeshift right back. I don't know why, but the Benzema chance in the first half. Remember that one? It doesn't even show up on the XG chart. Was it called back for something? Foul or offside?
Might have been offside. I think it was called back of offside, but I don't think it was offside. It would have stood, but I guess that's
right. Yeah, that's right. That's what it was, I think. Yeah. The replay showed that it was onside.
But no, he was quite...
but then there was another one too. There was two. One of them, is the one you mentioned, but there was another one where he has it point blank and it's blocked. Neither of those two show up on the XG chart for some reason. I don't know. So I guess the point is they did enough to at least squeak a draw.
Yeah, I mean,
that's Real Madrid.
I'm just speaking about the
chances.
Yeah, speaking about the XG, like I have it here, it's 2.94 to Villarreal, 2.02 to Real Madrid, but 0.60 of Villarreal's is that Danjuma chance at the end after Courtois left his goal for the corner that he goes up for. So I mean, take that off, and it is quite an even game overall in terms of the quality of the chances. So Real Madrid could easily have taken a draw from this one, but also Real Madrid obviously never go into a game looking for a draw. So there were still problems to address, even if they could have nicked a draw in this one, which would have been the theme. Villarreal, we mentioned that they're a tough team to go to. Historically, they've always been a tough team for Real Madrid. The last 5 visits, they've drawn all of them. So haven't won there now in 6 years.
Is it just me because I didn't watch it? You did because you covered it for Managing Madrid. And Lucas was actually there in the press conference room, so he would have insight too, but he's not here till Monday on the podcast. Was Ancelotti's press conference shorter than usual?
Longer than the Cacereño one, which was about 2 minutes. Longer than the Valladolid one, which was about 2 minutes. No, this one was a little bit longer than usual. Okay. I mean, for away games, they're always so short. The away game press conferences are, like 3-4 minutes. Everybody in the bus, get to the airport and get back. So
yeah,
no, I wouldn't say it was any shorter than a usual away game.
Yeah, I just only saw like 3 quotes in the post game presser. That's why I asked. Did anything stand out to you from what he said or no?
I already mentioned the reason for picking MIlitao over Lucas Vázquez was because Lucas Vázquez was tired, which that was our friend Niels Kern asked that one, which I'm glad he did, because that was one of the questions I had. Literally had it to write on the 3 questions, 3 answers piece. So thanks to Niels for getting Ancelotti to speak about that one. Apart from that, I mean, he was just quite honest. He said that the defence wasn't good enough. He listed a few of the reasons why. Villarreal could play through the lines. They weren't compact in the low block, and he said that they deserved to win. And then he was asked a little bit about the handball penalties because, of course, this is Spanish football and a game of 2 penalties involving Real Madrid. There's going to be some talk about the penalties. I think this is the least controversial Real Madrid game of 2 penalties that I've ever seen because, they're both penalties by the book, and they're both penalties that 10 years ago didn't exist. So Ancelotti kind of said that exactly that. They're both penalties, but fans don't want to see those kind of penalties, which I think is true. He then made a comment about he didn't want to say that it's not football after he got destroyed for saying that comment the other night after criticising Cacereño's pitch. So he's obviously been aware of the backlash to that. And that was it. Time to go off to the airport.
We can bring forward the penalty discussion a little bit later, but I did want to talk about the wing backs. And, I'm fine with the justification of starting MIlitao at right back in this game. I actually thought he looked pretty good for Brazil in that position. The problem is I think it works for Brazil in part because they have devastating wingers and a lot of interchanging parts in the final third that do damage. And you don't necessarily need attacking fullbacks. I'm not saying it would hurt to have them, but in Brazil, I think it was masked a little bit more. With Real Madrid, with both Mendy and we're just like, I guess my point is what I'm getting to is that we don't have much production from fullbacks in this Real Madrid team. Carvajal is not what he used to be. He's injured a lot, provides really good defensive cameos like he did in the Liverpool Champions League final and some other games leading up to that final. He was really good. But you just for a club that's in the past generations going from Camacho, Roberto Carlos, Marcelo, Carvajal, Salgado, I think you need a little bit more from those positions, and you're just not getting it. Ironically enough, and I kind of feel bad for him in some capacity, but he did the first goal was his fault. Ferland Mendy, up until that, I actually thought was probably our best defender. He had some really important challenges in the first half when things were a bit chaotic, but he gives the ball away. That's something that he has not fared well under pressure often, but he's kind of improved, I think, in his Real Madrid career in that respect. But today he gave the ball away with a really bad pass, and then it comes back full circle off him in unfortunate circumstances, goes into the net. The point is, I guess, about fullbacks. I'm genuinely worried about the fullback position for Real Madrid as it is currently constructed. You need to sign players, and I guess the problem is, as Matt and I discussed on a last week podcast for our patrons, the market is kind of thin. It's not an abundant position in world football. Like the right back position is not like this huge list of great right backs you can sign.
No, exactly. Kiyan on this, I think we've spoken about this a few times. The fullback position in the big picture, long term, is Real Madrid's weakness because exactly that reason. There's not that many of them, and the ones that there are already at bigger clubs who are not selling them to Real Madrid. As there was reports recently about Alphonso Davies going to Real Madrid. I'll see that when I believe it. I mean, if you have one of these fullbacks, you don't let them go. There can be talk about, they'll let their contract run out. These big clubs are going to offer for these fullbacks whatever they need because football nowadays is so much about that position. You need an attacking fullback. The best clubs all have it. The best clubs all have production offensively from that position. Players who are also good enough defensively. And Real Madrid, Barcelona too, Atletico Madrid too. That's a position where they've really struggled in recent years to sweep up some of these fullbacks. And Real Madrid have had a few interesting ones. Akraf they let him go. Fran Garcia I don't think is top level, but another decent one that they let go. And I think this is a position that Real Madrid absolutely have to address soon, probably by spending big money. Because Carvajal's not getting any younger. Lucas Vazquez isn't a solution. And Mendy is absolutely fine defensively, but for an attacking fullback, like you're saying, games like this, he's not there. And never mind the fact that his replacement is David Alaba, who's a starting centre back. So
who doesn't want to play left back either, from what we know, and for good reason. He's a better centre back.
Who also isn't young, who's also the other side of 30. So the talk is always Bellingham, Mbappe, all the fullback is low-key the most important position for the next couple of transfer windows.
Just a note on Davies, you can call this the Canadian connection of sorts, but I know his camp personally. Like, we're good friends, and I can just tell you that guy is so loyal to Bayern because they're the club that gave him a chance from Vancouver, like all the way to top flight football right away, and believed him in the young, and he's really loyal to them. And why would he leave? And why would they want to sell him? Like, it's a really good match, and I don't see that being disrupted. So every time I see a Davies to Real Madrid rumor, I'm just like, as much as I'd love it, you just kind of have to ignore it. But these names you mentioned, like the Fran Garcias and stuff. The thing is, like, a lot of these players are just good players. Like, Fran Garcia is a really good player. But that's the level we're going to be talking about, I think, right now for the immediate future. I'm not necessarily saying that Real Madrid have to or can sign the elite wingbacks, but have those options. I would love to have Fran Garcia as an option off the bench, in a game, like, because he can hold his own. Like, he's great fullback. I don't know if great is pushing it, but he's really, really good established La Liga fullback. Like, who can attack. So I think you're looking at players in that mold right now, unfortunately, because the ones you had, like the Achrafs and Teos, are gone, even though you had them in your hands. And I can at least say that the Teo one was justifiable, and even Achraf to some degree, because you have arguably the greatest right back in your club history in Carvajal.
A lot of it was just bad timing. Like, a lot of it was just bad timing for
timing matters.
Madrid. In the moment, it made sense because who you had was too good, and the player left, and that's that. It's such a specified position, fullback as well, that if you're not a starter, there's no other way for you to play. You can't just play defensive midfield for a bit. You can't just play as a winger instead of a striker. It's, along with goalkeeper, like the most specialized position that if the starter is better than you, you're pretty much not playing. And if there's a really good one in front of you that's at the right age, then you don't see a future there for you, and you have to move. So all those situations that Real Madrid have just been kind of unfortunate timing. But now looking back, it's obviously frustrating to look at, because they need someone now, and if not now, for next season for sure.
Yeah,
on both sides.
And you can't send players on 20-year loans until the player in front of them leaves, and that's just, it's hard to plan that. But at the very least, they've made money off these players. One of those stats that I know that people are going to roll their eyes and not care, because Real Madrid lost and pretty much everyone on the field was bad. But Kroos's numbers were just... He attempted 12 long balls today. Do you know how many he completed?
Most of them.
12. All 12.
Yeah.
All 12. But I also thought, like, there was the moment in the second half where Ancelotti makes a double sub in the 64th minute. Vasquez and Rodrigo come in from Mendy and Tchouaméni. So Alaba goes to left back, Kroos goes to defensive midfield. And there were just clearly issues defensively with that change, because Kroos would sometimes be high up the pitch, and Villarreal were having these transition attacks, and there was no defensive midfielder to help stop some of that bleeding. But, I suppose Ancelotti's just trying to do something to change the game, whatever he can.
And what one of the like small problems with that was that when Tchouaméni was off the field, and Kroos is supposed to be the holding midfielder, because he's taken all of the free kicks that Vinicius is winning down the left, every time a ball goes in, and his delivery wasn't great in this game, like from set pieces, but that's fine. There were so many bodies in yellow there that's normal. But he's taking all these free kicks from the left, and Villarreal are getting them away, and Kroos is not where you want your defensive midfielder to be, because he's over where Vinicius was fouled. And that happened 2 or 3 times towards the end with some of the counter-attacks, either taking a corner that Vinicius probably won, or taking one of the fouls. So, it's not a massive problem, because, Kroos was moved there because you're losing, you're going for the game, you take Tchouaméni off to bring on someone more offensive. This isn't usually a starting solution, putting Kroos in the centre, unless there's suspension or injury. But that was one of the problems that you could see towards the end, was that he was taking all the fouls and out of position as soon as he kicks the ball to deliver it. Yeah,
and these are all part of the defensive perils that Real Madrid suffered, the positioning and things being out of sorts and out of whack and chaotic. I just want to say this. February 12th, Barcelona versus Villarreal at Ceramica. I'm circling that one. I want to see this Pau Torres, Raul Albiol masterclass against Barca. I want to see it. Because I've seen this Villarreal performance go into just God mode.
Setien versus Xavi.
I don't trust it though.
Versus Xavi. I mean, I don't know. For any team, and for Real Madrid, it's only Barcelona that matters in this year's title race. When Barcelona have to go there, that's not easy.
Foyth 7 tackles today. Albiol and Pau Torres both 7 clearances each. Albiol was really good today. But does he still play like this every game? Definitely not.
No, he does. Him and Pau Torres are like maybe the best central defensive pairing in La Liga, like when they're both fit and healthy. And the thing about Albiol is his injury record is incredible. Like he's pretty much playing every game 90 minutes. Basically during the Conference League group stage, him and Pau Torres were rested, didn't even travel sometimes in the group stage, and they just took the midweeks off so that they could play 100% every weekend. And that was the strength of especially Emery's Villarreal. Like, it's incredible how good Raul Albiol is. Like, I don't think as many people watch Serie A, so his Napoli years maybe got a bit underrated, but I think he was just so good there as well. Like one of the proper underrated centre-backs of like the last 10 years.
There was a point in the second half when Pedraza comes in and he just dribbles 80 million miles past our whole team up the field and gets into the box and nearly scores something that you saw like a George Weah type of goal. And I'm like, this is a joke now. This is Pedraza is a good player, but this is like, it's like when you're playing FIFA and someone dribbles past your whole team with like I don't know,
the goalkeeper.
The goalkeeper. You're just all right, like what this is not real. But that's just the game was, and by the time Asensio's last second miss kick, which leads to I think Danjuma who misses the open net and maybe should have passed instead.
Which is incredible. Like it didn't matter, but what a miss. I mean,
what a miss.
You
it was far out,
or you just roll it. I mean, no, of course, but like 0.60 XG. That was you bury that and the whole stadium goes crazy and you go off and have a good Saturday night. But in the
0.19 in the XG officially, by the way. Looking at it now. 98th minute. Yeah. All right. So the handballs. Ancelotti said after the game, you either call them both or don't call either of them. I think that's a fair way of looking at it. This has been
different handballs, but that's the way the handball rule is now. That like these, like any one that hits the hand basically that isn't next to the body or supporting yourself on the ground, which Alaba's unlucky that he's so close to having the hand, touch. If it's touching the ground, basically. I don't think they give the Alaba penalty. The same way the Javi Sanchez one was given against Real Valladolid for Real Madrid last week. It's if you're going to ground but not on the ground yet, it's that's a penalty. So it's kind of for once kind of nice that there was just 2 penalties within 2 minutes of each other, and it's like okay, we're just back to where we were, 1 goal difference. But these kind of penalties in other games would be decisive, and they're just 5-10 years ago. Nobody is even claiming for these handballs. Like these are just, it's because VAR's there and can be a microscope.
So I brought up this point with Matt because it's something I'm thinking about all the time because I swear so many games in football every week have these weird handballs that the rule is different week to week. They're called sometimes, they're not called other times. And no one really knows what's happening. Everyone's like, well, this was intentional. This wasn't. It doesn't matter if it's intentional. Look at this. Look at where the arm is placed. Da, 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 da. And I'm just like, I feel like we need to fix the rules somehow. Like, I brought up this point with Matt. Like the Javi Sanchez penalty. because we talked about it after the Valladolid game. Like, to me, like, it's just kind of weird that a Javi Sanchez handball where he doesn't really know what's going on, he's going up for a challenge, is the same punishment as when Luis Suarez intentionally fists the ball away against Ghana in the World Cup. And I'm just like, I feel like the punishment sometimes doesn't fit the crime, I guess, in terms of the FIFA rules. And I don't know how to restructure it, but I feel like we got to restructure the punishments. Maybe not everything is a penalty. Maybe a handball in the box always gets called, but it's an indirect free kick sometimes because the punishment doesn't fit the crime. I don't know. It's just, it needs fixing to me.
No, definitely. I mean, like this one had kind of nice symmetry to it, that it didn't really affect the outcome of the game at all. But how many weeks does it affect the outcome of the game, these kind of penalties? How many games in the World Cup were decided with these kind of penalties? It's, it's a huge punishment for, especially in this game where you've got Benzema and Gerard Moreno taking the penalties. Like that's basically a goal. And, for two penalties that, like I say, I'll say it again, 5-10 years ago, nobody's even checking for this. And it's funny, actually, the one that Real Madrid get, Vinicius is calling for a handball, but he's calling for a handball on the goal line. He thinks Foyth has stopped with his hand. And he even points when he's speaking to the referee or shouting at the referee, he points at the goal line, claiming the handball there. Then they kind of stop, then they check it, and they see one beforehand that Vinicius has no idea, because when you see the slow-mo, Vinicius' head is turned a little bit when it kind of just brushes one of Foyth's fingers. So Vinicius doesn't even realise it's touched his hand there. It doesn't change the trajectory of the ball at all. They're both just still jostling for the ball. And that's a penalty that, like, and I said this, I tweeted this during the game. If Vinicius doesn't tell the referee to stop and look at the goal line one, I don't think they find this one, because nobody is looking for like every dropping ball if it touched someone's finger. But because the game was stopped a little bit, basically because Vinicius demanded it, they stopped. It wasn't on the goal line, but they did see beforehand this one. And 5 or 10 years ago, no one's even claiming for this one. Just like even in this game, Vinicius didn't actually claim for the handball that was penalised. He was claiming for one that he thought there was in the goal line that wasn't. So yeah, you're right. The rule needs to be changed, and maybe lesser punishments, maybe indirect free kicks or something is the way to go. But yeah, it cost too many games. Unfortunately, this one, the penalties actually didn't really decide it.
Yeah, I thought that was fascinating because I didn't even see that handball. I mean, I don't think anyone did until the replay when he went to look at the VAR monitor, and I'm like, wait, this is not the penalty we're talking about. I was so confused, and then I realized that there was another one in there. And that's the one that ultimately got called. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we haven't yet?
I think the only thing to conclude is we've got a rematch in a week and a half in the Copa del Rey. So the draw was early on Saturday morning. It's going to be the midweek of 17th, 18th, 19th. Of January, probably going to be later in the week because on the 15th Real Madrid could have the Supercopa final, so pretty likely to be the Wednesday or Thursday, maybe even the Thursday, to give all the Supercopa teams a bit of rest. So we've got a rematch. Going to be a very different game. Both teams are going to rotate a lot for sure, but Villarreal, Real Madrid it kind of always delivers. Last year's ones were 2-0-0s, but they were really good 0-0s, and another interesting one here. So let's hope the game in 2 weeks is another fun one.
Is that one? That's not a one-legged one, is it?
Yeah.
If that one is also one-legged?
The whole of the Copa del Rey is one-legged except for the semi-finals.
Oh, okay.
It's like the English League Cup kind of format now. Yeah.
So
one game to, and if Real Madrid lose that one, they're out. If it's a draw, it goes to extra time and penalties, and they decide it right there and then in the brand new Estadio de la Ceramica.
Let's just lose it. I don't care. Like, it's inevitable that we don't win that tournament, so might as well just get it over with and just focus on the league.
They asked Ancelotti about this ahead of the first game. Real Madrid's record in the Copa del Rey is so poor; they haven't won since 2014. And he said, "So why are you complaining to me? I'm the one that won the one in 2014 last time they won it," which is a good Carlo quote. But it's also it's 2023 now, 9 years ago. That Real Madrid last won a Copa del Rey, which and it's not their most important competition. It's probably the one they prioritise the least, but they need to win another Copa del Rey soon.
Yeah, it's a rare occurrence for a team as big as Real Madrid. I think since '94 they've won 2, which is a crazy stat in itself. And they often
maybe there's a curse after Ramos dropped it under the bus. Maybe there's like, these kind of like crazy football curses you hear, like cats buried under stadiums, and the team doesn't win a European Cup for 6 decades. All these kind of crazy curses you hear. Maybe Ramos dropping it under the bus was some sort of Copa del Rey curse that Real Madrid don't win it for another who knows what.
How do you reverse such a curse?
Do
you drop the next trophy under the bus to balance it out?
I think you reverse the bus back over the trophy. I think
just do it and rewind.
Yeah, double down.
All right. I'm okay to wrap it here.
Sounds
if you
good.
are. And we can reconvene. I think we're going to publish something just for our listeners' sake, just so they know. We're going to publish something I think is fitting because Matt and I spent some time on the Patreon episode talking about some right-back options, and I feel like it's just a fitting time to maybe release a small clip for free of that tomorrow, so I may do that tomorrow. But other than that, Lucas will be back on the podcast on Monday, so we're going to do a podcast then. And thanks for listening. I hope it brought you some kind of therapy. I don't know. But the season is long. So let's remember that Real Madrid's poor performances every year often don't matter much in terms of what the trophy count shows at the end of the year. So there's that, in case that provides you with any solace. Euan, thank you for your time, my friend.
No problem.
Appreciate it. And congratulations for being done at a reasonable hour. Thank you. Take care. Thanks for listening, and before we wrap it up here, we wanted to give a quick shout out to our patrons over on patreon.com/Managing Madrid, and specifically to our $10 plus patrons, because if you pledge $10 or more per month, you not only get access to everything and not only get guaranteed responses to your questions, you also get a specific shout out at the podcast. So shout out to our $10 plus patrons as follows: Brandon Alvarez, Willie Reed, Will Sousa, Way Pairing, Tobias Arroyo Botcher, Talab Salhab, Tahmid Kalam, Sushank Damala, Sujai Wani, Sumanchu Singh, Sheikh Hatiri, Shamil, Sergio Arispe, Santos Solrosano, Samuel Justin, Samar Z, Said Mahad, Sai Mohan, Sasi Kumar, Rodrigo Balmaceda, Rishi D, Phoenix, Peter Powell, Paulo Fierro, Patrick Odayafadi, Oscar Barrera, Nico Laxo, Nicholas Moeller, Nick Ribeiro, Mowgli, MJ Diego, Michael Zinberg, Marin Myrtle, Matthew Atkins, Martin Ridman, Magnus Lext, Logan Stahl, Leon Stavronakis, Kunal Tilakar, Crystal Glass, Kevin Rivera, Jose Cruz, John Fernandez, Jason Fitz, Ian Marley, Graham Gerard, Gary Kohut, Frederick Rantakiro, Frederick Sunros, Faisal Hamdan, S.A. Davisito, Eloy Enriquez, Edward Sossman, Daniel Williams, Con P, Christian Toth, Christian Acosta, Charles Williams, Brendan Powers, Brandon Stevens, Ashik Bashar, Arnab Mukherjee, Arman Gashi, Armando L, Anirudh Singh, Ananya Kumar, Azaz Hussein, Adrian Rios, Adar Zalukovic, Adam Dorsey, Varun, Fabian Moreno, and Daniel Smith. We love you guys so much. Thank you so much for your support. Thanks for being a part of this family. And Hala Madrid.